Welcome to Sykes Peak. Join us as we speak with experts, share inspiring stories, and provide actionable advice to help you reach your psychological peak. So get ready to embark on a journey of self discovery, growth, and empowerment. Welcome back to Sykes Peak. Here we are again today. I'm Dr. Keith Roach.
I'm Sean Van.
And here we are to talk to you about executive functioning. And one aspect of executive functioning is organization. In our last episode, we talked about planning and prioritization. This one is organization. It's probably closely related to planning and prioritization, but it involves a couple of steps that we go through to be able to achieve the task that executive functioning guides us with. And so these are just some of the things that we recognize as what helps in your executive functioning. Okay, executive functioning, that's that part of the brain that helps you to be more decisive, be more problem solving, be more task completion, to be able to do these things, especially when they're a challenge for you. Have you everything around your house neatly organized? Everything's got its place, and every place has its thing.
Not all.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, you mentioned in the last episode that you had 3 rooms that
everyone's got a junk drawer. I got a junk room or 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a method to madness, right?
Right.
Like everyone's got their method and how they arrange things.
I have a rule that I've tried to operate by. And that is like in purchasing clothes. If I buy 2 new shirts, and then what I do is I go to my closet and I take 2 shirts out.
Yep.
Right. So 2 in, 2 out. And that way, I maintain a status quo.
Right.
I'm updating.
Right.
Apparel, but. I don't always adhere to that.
Sure.
The other day I was at one of the convenience stores, and I was looking for, it was in one of the big box stores, and I was looking for a specific item. I forget what it was now, but as I walked up, there was a person, one of the workers standing there, and she goes, "Just so you know, these items," and they were like sun shirts or fishing shirts, that keep you from getting sunburned and that sort of thing. These items are $1 each.
Right.
And I thought, well, I really don't need $1 each. And
right.
And so I started looking through the, what was left, because
Sure.
someone had just walked
Sure.
away from that,
right,
and had a cart full
right
of stuff. And sure enough, these things were $1 a piece. And I walked away with 6 items that I had no intention of buying when I went in there.
Of course.
And now I've brought those into my closet. And, some people may think this is strange, but I try to keep things organized in my closet.
Sure.
And these do not, I've got like black running T-shirts or orange, colored T-shirts, or red, or or white, and that's the basic colors that I have,
right.
But these were not those colors. These
Right.
were different colors. There was some red, white, and blue. There was, and And I did not, or I have not, let me
Right.
put it that way. I have not taken 6 items out, so, uh, you know, uh, organization, I'm updating some things in my, in my apparel, but, um,
There's also, I would say with executive function, it's such a broad, it's just so a built-in mechanism. You were mentioning uh, being at a store and finding these discounts. If you went to a store with a list,
mhm,
great. You've got your priorities, right? You've
planned
maybe
it
in your
out,
head planned out your route,
right.
and maybe there's a few things that catch your eye that take you off of your planning route. But as you're putting things in your cart, you're arranging them,
Yeah,
right?
well,
I mean, well, some people do better than
my
others, but
wife does. My wife does
right?
that,
All the cans go in one place, right? All the bread and vegetables in another, and then
Right.
maybe all the frozen stuff together, right? And if anything else, you maybe
Fragile
bag
stuff
it,
goes in that
right?
that little seat,
You put it in a
and
bag when you go to check
yeah,
out. You put it in a bag because you know when you take it out, you want to put all these bags next to the pantry and these next to the fridge, and right. So like everyone's got that sort of style, but that planning was part of the process, but that organization happened. And this is something too, people organize things all the time without realizing it. Books on a shelf,
yeah,
clothes in a wardrobe,
right.
your thoughts, right?
Mhm.
How we arrange the world around us is oftentimes a reflection of how we've arranged ourselves internally.
So if you have an issue with executive functioning, then you would have an issue with disorganization.
That
So
would be an indicator. Yes.
organization is associated with executive functioning.
Yes.
Disorganization is associated with poor executive functioning. Not that you don't have it, it's just that you don't do it very well.
Right. Executive dysfunctioning.
Yeah. There you
Yeah.
go. That would be it. Well, you know, y- just you mentioned organizing your thoughts.
Right.
If you're a regular speaker in front
Right.
of someone, it is it you when you step in front of a group, you have to have your thoughts organized. If you
Right.
do not, then anxiety from just being public speaking is like the number one
Mhm.
anxiety provoking
Oh, yes.
response. Um, so so you may think I got this.
Yeah.
I do this all the time. It's no
Mhm.
big deal. But even the best speakers
Yes.
have their thoughts organized,
Yes.
and and they have them written down.
And probably practiced.
And it's very important to do that kind of
Mhm.
stuff, because when you do practice,
Yes.
it becomes
Perfect.
well, it just becomes second nature.
You're right.
I mean, it's um, and you get your point across better, especially in a public speaking.
Well, it's like
kind
training.
of situation.
It's like training, pitching a ball. The more you pitch, the better you get at it. The more you practice free throws, the better, well, ideally, the better you get at them. It's muscle
Right.
memory, and it's the same in even in intellectual capacity.
Yeah, any sport that you do,
Yeah.
the more that you practice, the better
Absolutely.
that you get.
Yeah.
Um, so that's the same in building relationships.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when you're developing a relationship with
Mhm.
someone, and whether it's romantic or if it's just a friendship,
Professional,
or
yeah.
you still have to have a bit of organization in the
Mhm.
process. There's some things that are, it's the word serendipitous.
Mhm.
Some things that just kind of happen, and everything clicks and everything
Right.
chimes and everything goes
Mhm.
well, and uh, but in relationships, a lot of times, and as the relationship grows, um, you begin to finish each other's sentences. Because you're on the same thought process, or the same thought um, wave,
Right. Yeah.
and you understand each other.
Right.
Um, um,
Do you think I mean, when I think about organizing things, maybe we put things in containers, right? We sort of compartmentalize to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
Books go on a shelf. I'm not taking random items from around my house and just throwing them on a bookshelf, and then random items and throwing them in a drawer, and then random items and then putting them on a nightstand, right? Um, so to some degree, everything has a location it belongs, but also a parameter that it belongs within
Mm-hmm.
in some capacity.
It's called a filing cabinet.
Yeah. Do you think relationships have the same sort of boundaries? They have the same sort of like
Mentally.
some, right? So some relationships belong on a shelf, some belong on a nightstand, some belong somewhere else.
I think that you mentally you you file things away. You know what to
Right.
talk about. You know what not to talk about.
Boundaries and
You know.
knowing, right, the social cues.
And I always, when I would teach this class on gen psych or physiological psychology, we would talk about memory. I mean, that was one of in that area in the brain, and I would refer to it as your filing cabinet.
Right.
And it's more like, in a filing cabinet, you have the one file that
Yes.
says food,
Right. Yeah.
and then there are file folders within that one file that
Right.
says food, that says American food,
Right.
Chinese food, Mexican food,
Right.
Thai food, unknown food, and what are the unknowns? Well, it's just things that are from around the world that you've never eaten, but people eat all the time.
Right.
Crickets,
Yeah.
I mean, bugs.
It's gotta go.
Yeah, who came up with the idea that looked at that little shell and said, "I wonder how this tastes."
With some garlic.
Yeah, So anyway, but that's how your brain is
Right.
organized, and so you have those organization skills. But how
So
many
when we-
people do we know that we call scatterbrain?
Well, yeah,
You
but so let me ask this: when we were talking earlier about if a person has executive dysfunction, they may be disorganized in their life. Would they also be disorganized in their emotional capacities? Their relationships would be disorganized.
Well, disorganized in their emotional responses,
Mm.
maybe, because there's some people that have a challenge in how they respond emotionally.
Well, what
to
about recognizing
events.
the difference between friendship or romantic
Oh yeah.
or a professional boundary and where that crosses? And I've taken this. I'm too personal with my coworkers,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
What about those kind of issues? Would that
Well,
be
You used a word there just a second ago, boundaries. We did a whole series
Yeah, we
on
did.
boundaries, and so boundaries are vital in
Sure.
relationship building. They're vital in organization. I mean, you have to decide before you go any further in a relationship just how far you go. Is there
So
is there
those-
physical touch? Is there flirting? Is there is it strictly business? Is it I mean, you
right,
have to get those ideas and boundaries
right.
in your head before you continue with a relationship.
Mm.
I have friendships with a lot of people that I've met through the years. Now, I have my thoughts about how important those people are to me, but I have no idea about how important I am to them,
Mhm.
or even if I am important to them. That happened to me one time. I remembered I was doing an interview. It was a long distance. It was a conference call kind of interview. And one of the people that was interviewing me was a colleague in my PhD years, when I was going through school. And he was in my cohort. There were only 10 of us in the cohort. But when I mentioned it to him, he said, "I don't recall. I don't
Right.
remember you." Well, a little shot to my ego, but I said, "Well, I remember you,"
Right.
and it was, um, just one of those things.
Right.
But for me, it wasn't that I saw him as a very, very close friend.
Right.
We were in a PhD cohort. I mean, we were dealing with stuff and handling stuff and
Right.
working with stuff and going through classes together and doing those kinds of things. But evidently, I didn't
Right.
make the impact on him that he made on me,
Right.
or I just remembered him. He didn't remember me.
Right.
Um,
Well, you mentioned earlier that you have to make a conscious decision about a relationship beforehand, before walking into a situation to keep yourself from getting caught off guard or
mhm.
ending up in a bad situation. And I think that still kind of plays back into what we were talking about and what we've been talking about with executive function about planning and organizing and about prioritization and like what type of relationship do I want for this person? And, what are my priorities with this relationship? And how do I want to arrange myself and organize myself in that environment and in that space, mentally
Yeah,
and emotionally, not just physically. I mean, and again, I think these executive functions they're not just my room's messy and you can tell that I might have some executive
yeah,
dysfunction, but
right, right,
it's also boundaries and relationships
right.
and how we go
Well,
about
how do
them.
we then, for the person that's listening out there, um, how do we make have the organization skill? How do we develop that? If we don't have that skill, how do you develop an organization skill? Do you think?
Fantastic question. I mean, I think growing up, my mom really helped me a lot. I didn't take to it much growing up. Um, but I think even having certain toys to play would help.
Hmm.
I had Legos. I
Hmm.
mean, let's talk about executive function right
Oh
there.
man,
There's
you got
so
to make
many.
decisions.
Well, you got a plan you got to
Right.
follow. You've got this piece on top of this piece in its right location, and you're constructing this in the right manner, and you have an outcome you're looking for. But I also play memory games.
Hmm.
Um,
I find it interesting. You had Legos; they connected together. I had blocks. I
yeah.
mean, you had to my construction of buildings and
Right.
bridges and things like that.
Uh huh.
It had to be in a certain way,
Oh yeah.
or it would fall apart.
Yep.
And
Well, is it Tinker Toys and Lincoln Logs and
right,
all those
right, right,
constructing type thing, but there were other games. There were lots of other games that I think helped. But my mom also gave me containers to put my things in at home, right?
right,
Make sure I had a bookshelf for my books, and that's where they went. And
right.
I had things that had to go in certain places. Button up shirts got hung up, t-shirts
Hmm.
got folded in a drawer, right? Like
Right.
you instill those things. And if you've never had that done for you as a child and you're an adult, make a decision
Yeah.
about how you want to arrange yourself.
That's the executive functioning part.
Yeah.
You have to decide,
Yeah.
I'm going to be more
Yeah. Well,
organized. How do I do the organization now? Well, we talked about it last time with lists.
mhm.
You make a list and you prioritize
Yeah.
that list.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
Like Legos, you got to have a plan,
right.
right? Yeah.
And, uh, yeah, you know,
Well,
s-
but here's the thing too. Different people will still organize differently. I have coworkers who arrange things alphabetically in binders, and I use color coded binders, right? And I don't think that the style matters nearly as much as just that it works for you.
man, then you have to remember all the colors and what they mean. And, I mean, if you
Yeah,
looked at my computer files and
sure.
everything that I've saved, you would think, oh man, this guy's so disorganized. Well,
Yeah,
and it is, because um, what the way that I organize is I try to remember, okay, this is property, this is
Right.
classes.
Right.
This is, so I have
Right.
these general, terms. And then when I click on that, then it has the list underneath it, but
I train a lot of different positions at my job right now, and I've got a color coded system. So a particular job, say like case managers, they're in blue. So when I build my schedule on my calendar, on one day it'll just be highlighted blue. Their training material is all in blue folders,
right.
right? So like
Right.
I know blue is case management, right? Like that's just but that's a style, that's a thing. It works
Right.
for me. For someone else, it might not work. But the point is again, it's an organization that helps me function at what I need to do in life.
Right. Well, organization, a very important part of executive functioning and part of the prioritization and planning aspect of it too. Well, that's another episode for us today. I'm Dr. Keith Roach,
I am Sean Van.
and we thank you for listening.